Hello, I'm Lloyd Rieber, and I'm here again to demonstrate how to build a simple LiveCode project that involves some computer programming. The goal of this demonstration is to introduce people who have never programmed before to coding within LiveCode. I believe that everyone can learn to code. And remember, the power of computer programming is that if you can imagine it, you can build it. By following this video, you should be able to build this project yourself, but I suggest you watch the video at least once all the way through before launching LiveCode and trying it yourself. Let's start with a short demonstration of the final project. Okay, get ready to follow the bouncing ball. This is a cool little project involving graphics and data-driven animation. The code, simple as it is at the heart of all user-controlled video games. Well, it's pretty obvious what I need to do. I need to click the button bounce. Let me first go up and switch over into run mode. And yeah, let me click that button bounce. And the soccer ball begins to bounce. Left to right, up and down, or down and up, and right to left, depending on where the bounces need to go. Seems to know where the sides of the screen are as it bounces. Now if I click anywhere, the ball stops and I get that button bounce back. If I click it again, it continues. So it's kind of nice. Now it even gets better. I know that's hard to believe, but if I go up here to these text windows, text fields, you can see I have speed X and speed Y set to 2 and 2. What if I set that speed X to 10? What's that going to do? Let's click bounce now. Yeah, so definitely a different kind of bounce. And if I set the Y to 0, I wonder if you can predict what's going to happen. It just bounces left to right. And if I switch that, let's make that a 0 and make that a 10, we get this. So it's definitely a bouncing ball that is under my control. Okay, well, let's see how we build this. Let's start by clearing out our memory. So I will go up to File and choose to close and remove from memory. Okay, and now let me go ahead and start a new file. Again, in LiveCode we use the metaphor of a stack of cards. So our files are called stacks, so I choose new main stack. And there's our first card. In many programs this might be called a slide or a page, but in LiveCode we have a stack of cards, so this is our first card. Now I like to have the stack be the dimensions of a classic iPhone. So let me go ahead and change the size of this first card. I do that by going up to Object and choosing Stack Inspector. Alright, so now I want to go to the size and position category of attributes here, and I want to change the width to 320 and the height to 480. Excellent. Now my ball in this program, believe it or not, is actually a button. And I'm going to bring in a new button. I'm going to kind of make it squarish. And let's go now. You can see, by the way, that the inspector changes to the object that is highlighted. It was the stack a moment ago. In fact, if I click in a neutral spot, it goes back to the stack inspector. So this inspector is context sensitive. If I click again on the button, you see that it now is the inspector for the button. I'm going to go up to basic properties, and I'm just going to call this ball. Okay. So I want this ball to be animated. Now I don't really want this to be have a look of a button. I want it to actually look like a soccer ball. So I'm going to demonstrate a really nice feature in LiveCode which allows you to skin an object, which means add a graphical image to it that is of your choice. And obviously I would like to have a soccer ball. So how do we do that? What I'm going to do is create a new card that is going to act as, well, think of it as a library of different objects. And one of the objects that will be in this library is the image of a soccer ball. So let me go up to Edit. That's not right. Let's go over to Object. So you have to do that. You have to look around sometimes to find what you need. And I want to choose New Card. And when you make a new card, it always puts that new card after the card you were just looking at. All right, so I have now 2 cards in my stack. And what I'm going to do now is bring in a graphic of a soccer ball that I found. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go up to File and choose to import as control, which is kind of an odd way of thinking about an image file, but an image file, like a lot of other kinds of multimedia, are called controls. I am going to choose to import as control image file, and I found this wonderful little soccer ball. So I'm just going to choose it and open. All right, great. So here I have this soccer ball here, and it doesn't really matter where I put it on this second card. What is important is that you can see that under basic properties for this soccer ball, it has an ID number that LiveCode has given it. So 1006. So you have to remember that number for what we're going to do next. Now I want to go back to my other card. So we have this wonderful little navigational set of controls up here. I'm going to go to the first card. There's only 2 cards, so that's going to be the first card. And I'm going to click on the button ball. And what I'm going to do is now go to the icons and border properties of this ball. And you can see here I have a lot of different icons that I can choose for different states of this button. But just for the icon itself, did you remember that number? 1006. Hit the tab key. Now I see this soccer ball beginning to show up over here. Now I do not want to make it 3D. I don't want a border. I don't want to highlight the border. I also want the word ball to disappear, and I want the size of the button to match the size of the image of the soccer ball. So how do we do that? Let's go and do the first one, which is size and position. Yeah, see this fit content for the width and height? If I click both of those, you will see that the soccer ball is now, actually the button is exactly the size of the soccer ball. It looks a little bit off, and that's because we're still showing the name. So if I go up to basic properties and say not to show the name, you will see that the soccer ball now completely appears. Isn't that great? So any button, or really any object for that matter, you can use this simple trick of bringing in an image, put it on a card off to the side, think of it as a library, take note of the ID number, and then that ID number can be used to help skin some other object. All right, fantastic. Let's go ahead and do a save before we do anything else. Save as. And I'm going to call this bouncing ball. It's important to save early and then save often. Let's start by making a button that will trigger all the bouncing. So I'll bring a button over and I'll call that bounce. Alright, so I have the button chosen. It's highlighted, so I now will hit the code button up here to bring up the script window. And now I need to move my windows around a little bit, managing my various LiveCode screens or windows is important. Well, let me start now by demonstrating a really great property called location. And you will find this property has all kinds of uses in projects that are graphical and where you're moving things around based on what the user is doing. So it's a really simple thing here. I'm going to say set the location of button ball, and again I put the name of the button in quotes, to Well, let's put it to the center of the screen. Remember that we're using the iPhone dimension, so the width is 320, so we're going to go halfway. So we're going to bring in the halfway number from left to right, and then we put a comma, and the second number is going to be the halfway number from top to bottom, so half of 480 is 240. So set the location of this button ball to 160, 240. Let's hit the apply button. We have a green light that says that the code seems to be valid. Let's now run this. So I go back up to run mode, and now I choose to click the button bounce. And voila, it goes to that center location. Now, again, just to play around here a little bit, what if I just take out the middle number and 4, hit apply, hit bounce again, and you see that it goes over 10, down 20, which is the top left-hand corner of the screen. So yeah, we need to just see how this works a little bit. So I'll go back to 160 and 240, hit the apply button, yellow to green is good, hit the bounce button, and it goes to the center. So yeah, this command does just what it says. It sets the location of the button ball, well, to these two coordinates, and the very first coordinate is the horizontal, which we might call the x. If you remember algebra, we like to use x and y for these two dimensions, the first one being the horizontal, or x, and the second being the vertical, or y. All right, so that's a really important start. Now, just to kind of prove this point, could put some variables in there, x and y. So why not do this? Put 160 into x and put 240 into y. That way I can have an x here and a y here. And you'll see if I hit the apply button, it goes again to green. And I'll just go ahead and go to edit mode and move this button of the soccer ball up there, go back into run mode, and when I click the word bounce, the button bounce, there it goes. And I did not declare these as global variables, therefore they must be local variables. And I know the difference between local variables and global variables is still rather a mystery to people. But like I said, if you don't declare them as global variables, they are therefore then local variables. For this particular project, though, since we're just going to be doing this animation on this one card, and we're not going to be keeping track of this x and y in other parts of my program, I think we can leave this as just a local variable. So that's what we'll do for right now, is just leave it as local. All right, good. And believe it or not, we have all of the basic ingredients here to do our bouncing ball animation. For example, watch this. I'm going to go ahead and hit the return key a few times, and I am simply going to do this. I am going to add 2 to x. And then I am going to wait, let's just say maybe a half a second, 0.5 seconds, and then I will do the same, enter the same line, set the location of button ball to x, y. I guess I could have done a copy and paste there. Let's see what that looks like. Move this over, go to edit, go to run mode, and now click bounce. Did you see that? It made a little move to the right hand side. Let's maybe add 4 to x. And now let's go ahead and try it again. Notice how it goes back to the starting point, the center of the card, and then it moves just a little bit to the right. All right, let's continue with this idea. What if we copy those lines of code and pasted them 2 times? All right, let's see what this looks like. Go to run mode and now bounce. Yeah, see that? Now you might say it doesn't really look very good. Maybe instead of 0.5 seconds, a whole half second, maybe that delay should be something much smaller. How about one tick? A tick is 1/60th of a second. I'm just going to paste that in to those locations. And now let me try it again. Yeah, okay. So really, I am repeating something over and over. And this gives me an opportunity to show the repeat command. So I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to type repeat until the mouse click. And this is a little chunk of code where I started with a command to repeat. I have to then say end repeat, kind of like the on mouse up, end mouse up. This is a separate chunk of code. I'm going to now press the tab key, and you'll see that it reformats my code nicely, and you see the indentation there to show that the repeat and end repeat has this code in between. Let's hit apply. Let's see what this does. Hit bounce, and it goes off the screen. Let's try that again. That looked pretty good. Let's go back now. Go from add 4 to x to add 2 to x. Let's see what that looks like. Let's change that to maybe 10. What does that look like? So it went quite fast that time. So this number 10, 2, 4, it is in a sense giving me the speed of the ball. And so it's just saying how many pixels is it skipping each time it does one of these little repeats, and it repeats it until the mouse click. And let's be clear, let's be really sure we know what's going on here. So starting at the very top, when the mouse button is pressed and let go, we put the value of 160 into a variable called x. We put 240 into y. We take that value and we put the ball at that location, over 160, down 240. And then we start manipulating that x variable, the horizontal. We add 10 to x. So it is now 170. We wait 1/60th of a second, then we say please move the ball to that new location. So the xy is now 170, comma 240. And we keep repeating that, adding 10 each single time. So 170, 180, 190, and so on. So we just keep setting the location of the ball to that new location. So we're going again, skipping in increments of 10 or 2 or 4 or whatever. So again, that number, add whatever to x, is really corresponding to the speed of the ball, the speed at which the ball appears to be moving. So we actually have a nice little animation engine right now that we can use to our advantage. All right, let's build on the fact that this 10 or 2 or 4, whatever number this is corresponding to the speed. That number is going to vary. We want the ball to go faster or slower, we have to make that number be a different number. So anytime we have a value that has the potential to vary is a good place to put in a variable. So let's do that. Let's put or make a variable that corresponds to the speed of the ball. So instead of 10, I'm going to put in a variable. Let's give it a little bit more of a formal name. How about var for variable speed x? Something a little more descriptive. So all right, we need now to give that a value. So let's go up here and let's say we want to put, how about 10 into var speed. Let's hit apply. Let's see if that works. Okay, so it seems to have the same basic effect. Let's go now to change that to maybe a 1 and see if it works again. Yes, very good. So we now have a variable that corresponds to speed. Now so far we've only been working with the horizontal direction, x. Why not do the same thing for the vertical direction, y? So I'm going to take this statement right there and I'm going to copy it. And let me go ahead and paste that in and make one important change. We'll put in y there so we have a brand new local variable. So okay, let's go down here and do the same thing. We will copy that and paste that line. Change that to a y there and change that to a y. Let me hit the tab key to reformat. So we're doing the very same thing now. We are going to be adding to y, and of course adding to y means the ball will go downward because the top left hand corner of the card is the 0, 0 origin. As it goes down it gets bigger. Let's see if this works. Let's hit apply and now let's hit bounce, and there it goes. Down it goes on a nice 45-degree angle. Now the trouble is, of course, when the ball gets to the edge, it just keeps on going out into, well, I don't know where it goes. It becomes not visible. It just goes off the edge of the universe, so to speak. What I'd like it to do is bounce back when it hits an edge. How do we do that? Okay, let's think this through a little bit. So let me go here and just kind of use the ball as an example. So I'm just going to grab it in the edit mode here. So as I'm going to the right in the horizontal, I am adding to x. Therefore, to go to the left, I need to subtract from x. Same thing for y. When I'm going in this direction, going downward, I am adding to y. In order to go the other direction, I need to subtract from y. So something very special needs to happen when I hit the edges, either the left or right, or the top and the bottom. I need to go from adding to subtracting. So that's what we're going to do next. Now let's also make sure we are clear on what the boundaries are of our card. Going to the right, the edge is really 320 pixels to the right. The left edge is 0. For the y direction, at the very bottom, it is 480 pixels. But again, it is also 0 at the very top. So those four numbers, 0, 0, and 320, 480, are going to be the key numbers here that will define our boundaries. So let's see how we use those four numbers. Okay, so what we need to do is think about those boundaries, and I'm going to add some lines of code right after the repeat. And this is a good example where we need to do some if-thens. So if you think about it, if x is greater than 320, then, well, we need to do something. If x is less than 0, well, then we need to do something else. Similarly, if y is greater than 480, then we need to do something. And if y is less than 0, then we need to do something else. Well, what we need to do is switch from addition to subtraction. And there are a couple of ways of doing this. I think the following is the most straightforward. If you multiply a number by -1, you are going to change its sign from, if it's positive, to a negative. If it's already a negative and you multiply it by -1, it goes from a negative to a positive. So if I add a negative number, I am in essence subtracting. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this strategy where if x is greater than 320, then I'm going to put -1 times that variable speed x into variable speed x. I'm just saying, take whatever number speed x is, and I think right now we have it as a 1. Well, make it be -1 and put that -1 into var speed x. So this strategy is what I'm going to be using for each one of these. So in fact, if it's less than 0, if it goes off the screen to the left, well, that must mean it's being subtracted as we go. So multiplying -1 again by whatever number it is, a negative of some sort, is going to change that into a positive. So whatever var speed x is, I'm going to be adding it down here. But again, adding a negative is going to be the same as subtracting. And we can do the very same thing here for y. I'll just go ahead and type this out. If it's greater than 480, then I'm going to put -1 times var speed y into var speed y. And that is exactly the same thing I need to do if it's less than 0. All right, let's hit apply. And now let's see if it works. Then we'll come back and look this code over again to see if we understand it. All right, I have a green button here, green light, so I know I'm good. Let's hit the button bounce. So far, so good. Yeah, now it's going kind of slow, and I'm rather impatient, so I'm going to click anywhere to stop the repeat, because again, repeat until the mouse click. Let's go ahead and change this 1 to a 5 in both cases. That will speed things up quite a bit. Hit apply, good, and let's press the button bounce. All right, I've made one full circle, one complete circuit. Yeah, so all it's doing is when it hits those boundaries, I multiply it by 1, and that variable, let me go ahead and click anywhere to stop, that variable, var speed x and var speed y, is getting its sign changed either to a positive or a negative, and that makes all the difference. So things are working really well, but it's kind of a drag to have to come up here and change this number here inside my code every time I want to change the speed of either the x speed or the y speed. So let's go ahead and do something a little bit more interesting. Let's go ahead and add a field, a text field, to the card itself that we can manipulate instead. Let me go into edit mode, and I'm going to bring in a scrolling text field. I always start with scrolling text fields. I like them. They're so easy to manipulate. There it is. I don't really want a scrolling text field, so I'm going to go to the field's properties and do a few things. First of all, let me just name the field speed, and let me go ahead and turn off the scroll bar there. Okay. So as I kind of try to resize this, you can see there are different lines of text that I can put in, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. Now, in the prototype, you might remember I had another text field here that gave some labels. I think it said something like the x speed and the y speed. So we're just going to have to remember to have the x speed be the number on the first line and the y speed the number on the second line. So if I now go to run mode, if I type a number here, let's go ahead and type 3, return 3. I like that first number to be used for the x speed and the second number for the y speed. So how do I get those numbers from there to be plugged in to my code? Well, it's really not a problem at all. Let me move this out of the way and take a look over here. So I have here to put 5 into var speed x and put 5 into var speed y. Well, all I'm going to do now is change that to say, well, no, I'm going to take out the 5 and say this, put line 1 of field speed into var speed x. And here I will say put line 2 of field speed into var speed y. Click apply. And again, obviously I need to make sure that I have everything matching. The field does need to be named speed, which I know it is. And if you're not sure, if I click on, or if I'm not sure, if I click on that field again, oh, you know what? I must have forgotten to hit the return or the tab key. I'm glad I checked, because that has to be the name of that field. Okay, let's go now into run mode, and let me just click the button bounce, see what happens. All right, good enough. Let's change this 3 to a 6 and click bounce. Yeah, so I'm just now manipulating the X with the 6 and the Y is still with the 3. If I change that to a 10, and let's go ahead and change that to a 0, let's click bounce. And there we go. Goes back and forth. Okay, great. I think we are almost done. Of course, you may say to yourself, that's still not too satisfying to have to go into a text field to change those two numbers. It would be much better, much smoother if I had like a slide bar or something just a little bit more elegant there. And I could easily do that. I'm just not going to do it here. Okay? It would take too much time. What's next? You might recall in the prototype I had the button bounce magically disappear when I clicked it, and it magically reappeared when I clicked anywhere else to stop the animation of the ball. That is really easy to do. So on mouse up, after I press the mouse button, I want to hide that button. And since this code goes with that button, I can say hide me. Which I know looks kind of funny, but the code knows where or what object it resides in. So the word me, it understands as well. It's the button that was just pressed. So hide me as soon as I press the button. And then at the very end, after the repeat, show me. All right, let's hit the apply. All right, everything looks good. Now let's try this out. Click bounce. The button's gone. Click anywhere, and it magically reappears. Excellent. Let's do a final save. Well, that's all there is to it. Now it's your turn. Download your free version of LiveCode Community Edition and try building this little project for yourself. Look for other first project examples and tutorials on my website. Happy coding!